It's a mere fact that electronics tend to distract us from the non-virtual world, as we often find ourselves on fantastic adventures into cyberspace. I remember my dog once, looking for attention, sat in front of our TV, just because that was the point of focus. Like my dog, we are entities that used to get so much more attention before the cyber revolution. Now, these entities must evolve and find new mediums in which to contact us. I'm rather new to this whole creepypasta thing, but I've always known that the virtual world reflects our own, and because there are dark corners of the real world, there are dark realms in the cyber world as well. Initially, I brushed off the idea of evil travelling throughout the cyberwaves. There were always explanations. Creepy fetishes, cynical absurdists looking for a good prank for the superstitious, plain weirdos lost in their own fantasies, etc. I'm not going to say that I met evil online, but rather, I met something. It could be a prankster. Hell, it could be an alien. Or it really could be evil. I was fascinated by the stories of bizarre events surrounding creepypasta, and instead of finishing or even starting my sociology paper, I spent a whole Sunday afternoon sifting through articles and pictures that frankly left me terrified many times. I even came across a video here and there. Then I came to a video. Sadly, I didn't even notice the name. It was a webcam-like video, and the reason I didn't notice the title is because of who was in the screen. A hideous creature was manning the camera. It wasn't pale, but rather white, like powder, void of colour. It had two sunken eyes and an elongated nose that, rather than protruding from its face, sank when it came to its lipless mouth. The creature had greasy black hair and made movements not like a human. Without moving its mouth, it let out a hoarse laugh. Its eyes bulged, and by far, it had been the creepiest thing I had seen that day. I quickly clicked on the next link I could find. I didn't care. The screen went white, or at least the browser did, as if it were loading the link. But it was then redirected right back to that creature's webcam. Its laughter became much higher pitched and louder. I clicked the Wikipedia link, but again, it redirected back to that damned webcam. I finally quit the browser, and it was, for the time, over. My heart raced, but began to calm as I caught my breath. What was that? I continued on with my life, but every once in a while, that creature slipped back into my mind. I went back to my room, stared at my laptop, and gulped. I proceeded to open the browser, and honestly, got distracted and went to Facebook. Nothing out of the ordinary. Oh, wait, except for half of my friends had this creature as their profile picture, my girlfriends included. I called her and she checked her profile. Nothing was awry. I tried to rationalize this. I doubted it was a demon. What would they do with a webcam? Don't they have some other creepy stuff to do? I doubt it was an alien. But damn, that is really good makeup. And who the hell does that much work? I knew what I had to do. I found that webcam, and I just stared at the creature, and it stared back. Its eyes were deep, black, full of malice. "Excuse me," I said calmly. It made a short gasp and moved backwards ever so slightly. Its eyes widened a bit. Then it revealed a long, black tongue. Can you leave me alone, please? I asked politely. It turned its head to the side and squinted. Well? I asked as I nervously gulped. The creature then took a deep breath and let out the most terrifying scream imaginable. No, scratch that. One cannot imagine how horrifying it was. It snarled, revealing crooked, sharp, and different-sized teeth as it screamed. I jumped in my seat and turned the volume off, and yet the scream just got louder. I was afraid my neighbors would notice, so I decided to scream back. "Shut up!" I yelled, and there was silence. "Thank you. Now, if there's something you want," I gulped, "please tell me." The creature was silent. "If you have nothing more to say," I had to think my next words wisely, "please leave me alone. You're quite terrifying. I am terrified. I'm not interested in being cursed, and quite frankly, I love my life. Yes, it is difficult at times, but all in all, it's pretty awesome. I'd appreciate it if you'd go somewhere else now. If I need to be terrified, I know where to find you." The creature's eyes widened, and it approached the camera as if it were to walk right through my screen. The screen went black, and it was over. I no longer felt afraid, and time went on. Weeks later, now that the fear has subsided, I thought I'd look for that creature once more to see, with a clearer mind, who the culprit was. I could not find it, however. That was the end of it, I suppose. I guess it was just a normal haunt that did just what my dog had done a few years earlier, and just found attention. I had a friend named Micah growing up. He was always a little bit off from everyone else I knew, and I assumed he had some sort of mental disability, probably Asperger's. Around age 14, Micah told me about a YouTube video he found entitled simply, "The Smile." He told me about YouTube videos he had stumbled upon all the time, so I didn't really pay attention to this one. As time went on, it seemed his issues were getting worse. He kept talking about the video, almost obsessively. I asked Micah's single mother if he had been talking about it to her. She said she hadn't heard anything about the video, but she would talk to him about it. Upon talking to him, asking what the video was, she was very upset with me when Micah made absolutely no mention of it. I asked a few of my friends that were also friends with Micah, but none of them had heard him talk about the strange video either. I was really worried about Micah, so I decided to get on the net and watch the video to see if I could get to the bottom of things. I was a bit shocked when it wasn't in the many pages of search results I clicked and scrolled through. It would make sense if the video didn't have many views, as it would be quite hard to search for. The next time I saw Micah was just about a week after my search. He was becoming less functioning, and I felt sorry for him. I asked him if he would show me the video, and what he did next was borderline crazy. He slipped out a piece of paper and pen from his pocket, as if he was waiting for the day I would ask. He wrote down the exact YouTube URL and handed it to me with a sly look on his face. Something seemed very fishy. I thanked him politely and rushed back home to look up the video. I typed in the address on my browser and hit enter, tightening my legs around the chair I was sitting on, expecting the worst. 404, page not found. I instantly knew that something was terribly wrong. I ran as fast as I could to Micah's house, which was just over a mile away. I pounded on his front door. No answer. Even worse, I was both paranoid and scared for Micah, and those emotions make you do things you normally wouldn't do. In an extreme fight or flight moment, I grabbed a stray wooden plank and smashed the kitchen window open. I jumped in, slightly cutting my leg, and rushed to Micah's room. I swung open the door, and bile immediately filled my mouth and spilled to the floor. Micah was sitting at his computer, head facing the opposite way his body was. A knife drew a line of dark red blood from Micah's face to the floor. Worst of all was his smile. It seemed that even though the rest of his body was limp, his face had been frozen. Large cuts extended his mouth to his cheekbone, his hideous smile showing each and every one of his crooked teeth. His mouth was filled with blood, and if his neck hadn't been snapped, I'm sure he would have choked on it. Before calling the police, I took one glance at the computer screen and made out 2 words that would absolutely haunt me for the rest of my life. Video deleted. It was around 3 AM this June. I was on Skype with this cute girl I encountered on a forum a month ago. We were discussing about strange things that happened to me recently. Doors shutting, lamps turning on and off, and even objects falling from the furniture. She was talking about a ghost or a poltergeist. Who might have fun with this kind of stuff? But even though I felt paranoid, being paralyzed by the slightest noise, I couldn't believe in these stories. Well, that's what I told myself all along. Because I knew I could regret it sooner or later. I was in the dark, and I felt a little uncomfortable after our long debate on the subject. I decided it was time to refresh myself. I got up and entered my bathroom, then washed my hands to make sure the water wasn't too cold. I stared at my reflection for a moment. After a brief hesitation, I bent over and splashed water on my face. Then, I felt something unusual. A slight airflow. I looked behind me. The door was closed. Did I shut the door when I entered the bathroom? I couldn't remember. I took a towel and proceeded to dry my face, unable to see a thing. While doing so, I heard a knock on a glass-like object. At first, I thought it was coming from the mirror, but there was nothing except my reflection staring back at me. I put the towel back on the towel holder and opened the door when I saw something in the corner of my eye and heard a little noise, like something had moved behind me. I quickly looked back at the bathroom. At first, I looked at the mirror, but I then noticed the towel was on the floor, right in front of the bath. I was about to pick it up, but as I approached, I felt more and more uncomfortable. I could not stop staring at the shower curtain. Then I heard a second knock, the same as before. But I realized it wasn't coming from the mirror nor the bathroom. I turned around and headed back to my room, leaving the towel on the floor Now, I was almost back to my bed when I felt like something was watching me. I looked through the window, but there was nothing unusual. I took my computer and asked my buddy if she had heard the knocks on the glass or if it was her. "Yes, I did hear it," she said. "You still do not believe the poltergeist stuff?" I admitted having doubts about what I had told her earlier. She then got up and said, "I'll be right back," and left the room. She left the door slightly open, which made me uncomfortable for a moment. But then I heard this noise again, a knock on the glass of my window. I felt too paranoid at first and did not dare to look. I thought it was my imagination, but it knocked a second time. I looked up from my screen, only to find something standing still behind my window, staring, grinning. I almost felt like it was laughing at me. My monitor being the only light source in the room, I could hardly see its face, but its smile petrified me for a moment. After a few seconds, I heard a door open and footsteps. I could barely catch my breath when I heard, "Hey, I'm back." I looked back at my screen and understood it was only my buddy that got back on a computer. I told her I had to show her the thing that was staring at me, but it had faded away before I could rotate my webcam. "Did it really scare you?" she said. "I thought you didn't believe in those things." Her reaction made me curious. Why was she so excited about this? I was so lost in my reflection that I thought I imagined what she said next. "Boo," said the ghost, and they disappeared. Before I could even react, the screen went black for a moment. It soon got back to normal, but something different was on the screen. It wasn't the excited girl's face anymore. I saw a man sitting on his bed, facing the computer. In fact, the scene was very familiar until I recognized it. It was my bedroom. On the verge of panic, I was still able to notice something odd. The angle from which the image was taken from my bedroom. It was as if something was right outside my window, filming that exact moment. I looked through the window for a second before turning around to face my screen again. The delay let me see myself stare back at me through the webcam. The screen went back to the girl I've been talking to for the past month, except this time, she was in near pitch black. She got closer to the camera and didn't do much for a few seconds. Still frightened from what had just happened, I didn't move, waiting for her to say something. But she remained silent. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand. Until she started grinning. I met James Vickers when we were both about 12. We were next door neighbours, and I'd been out in my backyard playing soccer by myself, kicking the ball against the fence. It was at this point I met James. It took me a little while to notice his little speckled face peering down at me from his bedroom window. When I spotted him, I waved. He waved back and opened his window to talk to me. We spoke about lots of things: interests, favourite food, favourite video games, all sorts. I asked James if he would like to come to my house and play soccer with me. He politely declined, and told me that he suffered terribly with asthma, among other illnesses, and that his parents absolutely refused to let him out of the house or let anyone in. He instead asked me if I had a Facebook account and said he would add me on that. I checked my Facebook later that night, accepted James's friend request, and we got chatting. And from that day, that's pretty much how our friendship went. I would head after school in the morning, finish up, come home, and get straight on Facebook to speak with James. That's the way it was for about 5 years. Unfortunately though, James's illness got the better of him one day, and he grew very sick. The inevitable happened though. I hadn't spoke to James on Facebook for a few days. I had spent some time in my back garden too, waiting for him to open the window and let me know that he was fine. He never did. Instead, his father came to my house one evening and presented me with a small invite to a funeral. He told us about how much you both had in common. His father told me. You were his only friend as far as we know. The funeral was very touching. I did my best to hold back my tears, but completely lost it when Fields of Gold by Sting was playing as they took James's casket away. After the funeral, in his honor, still dressed in my suit, I had a bit of a kick around with the same soccer ball I had when I first met James, and had a beer in the back garden. It felt weird knowing that the room he used to speak to me from was now empty and unoccupied. As sad as I felt, I knew he was in a better place. A place where his afflictions would no longer bother him. His death had come so sudden though. The funeral just hadn't done it for me. Perhaps I needed some kind of closure, just to let me know that James was truly gone and wasn't coming back. So that night, I logged onto Facebook once more, opened up a chat box to James's account, and typed, "Hello, James." At this point, I realized how silly I was being, and promptly deleted the message before settling down in bed. I left the computer on, just in case any of my other friends sent me any messages. Something then happened that sent a chill up my spine. The only light in the room was being emitted from the computer screen, and as I peered across the room at James's still open chat box, I saw the words, "James is typing."